rest of us are gonna do.
Let me know if you need any help next weekend.
Since that clock is wrong, Sandy, we're ready to go.
You sit next to me, you got it.
Call the August 4th Common Council meeting in order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Olson?
Here.
Alderman Dandria? Here. Alderman Mayer? Here. Alderwoman Wilhelm?
Here.
Alderwoman Hanneman?
Here.
Alderman Barber?
Here.
Alderman Nelson?
Here. Have a quorum. Please rise and join the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is citizens' comment period. Any citizen wishing to speak, please rise, come forward, and give us your name and address, and let us know what you want to say.
Sure, Liz Charwitz, 3909 West Heather Ridge Drive. I'm here to cover two items. First, if it would be possible for public comment to be made online through some type of virtual platform, just for safety. I appreciate everyone wearing masks, but I don't see everyone 6 feet apart in parks, and I just don't feel like that's a safe place unless we have major building upgrades like bipolar ionization, ventilation, UV disinfectant equipment in this room, which I don't think we have. It's probably not the best bet to be sitting so close. So I really hope public safety is number one. I know we're all here together, so just want to put that out for consideration. Second, I'm sure you're not surprised I'm here for the Market Avenue extension. I'm glad to see that it's an update or status update on the agenda. I want to just reiterate that this is a city problem and not a developer problem. My concern is that we're going to be back to square one, where we're asking the developers to pay for a road that's really not going to give them benefit. We're never going to get this project done. I know, Mayor, you even said you're going to try to arm wrestle the developers, and you've taken the time to meet with me I know you're in a hard spot, but unless we really take ownership of this project and use funds that supposedly were allocated, I think it's around $750,000, it's never going to happen. And now that we're home, taking kids on school is one thing, bike rides, just the use of the area. And we can argue that till the cows come home, but we know the council agrees that it's a good project. It's just a matter of who's going to pony up the dough. And we know that once the developers get the building of the houses is on hold right now. Once they build their homes, that's going to increase our area's tax base. Over time, it will hopefully pay for the extension. So I would love to not have to come here tonight to talk about it. So it'd be nice to put it to rest. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to listen in at home. I'm putting my kids to bed. But I just wanted to put my call out that please, let's not keep repeating the problem. I'm not good at remembering quotes, but what's that thing that if you keep repeating yourself over and over expecting a different outcome, it's insanity. You can fill in the actual words, but that's kind of where we're at is insanity. So let's not add to the pandemic of the craziness we're already in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Only one other citizen. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else rise, I will close the citizen comment period. With that, we'll move on to mayoral announcements. We have a COVID-19 update by Director Day. Glenn, can you share your mic? Actually, the mic.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to start out, go a little out of order from the agenda and do the statistics first, and then we'll kind of roll into other developments in the last week or so, and then take any questions that you have. So as I'm sure most of you know, we, about a week and a half ago, rolled live with our online dashboard with the help of the GIS team here at City Hall. So I'd just like to thank both Todd and Brian for all the help that they gave us in getting that up and running. It is updated every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the data from directly from the disease surveillance system. So what we can do with that is that it gives us a lot more data than we were putting out before, and it does a lot of the work behind the scenes, so freeing up some time of my staff having to do that update on a continuous basis. With that being said, as of yesterday, we sat at 496 total cases since our first case back on March 20th. 310 of those, or 62%, came in the month of July. So there was a tremendous uptick that we saw in addition to the uptick across the state stemming from things that were going on the last part of June and running through the 4th of July holiday weekend. Predominantly, our cases saw the biggest increase in ages 16 to 30-year-olds. So again, that outdoor gathering, party, barbecue, pool party, outdoor bar venues seem to be the catalyst for a lot of our individuals being linked together. So far, we have 406 people that have recovered, meaning that they've made it through the isolation protocol, which is about 82%. We have 80 active cases right now, down from an all-time high of about 115 or so a couple weeks ago. So that's good news. We did add a statistic to show the active contacts that we're tracing. So in addition to anyone who tests positive, we do tracing with those individuals to find out who they were in close contact with. So that's the 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes of time. Those individuals are called close contacts, and we request that they quarantine at home unless they meet certain provisions to still be allowed to work. And there are 246 active contact investigations right now, or people in quarantine in the city of Franklin. And lastly, on the statistics side, our positivity rate has gone up a bit in the month of July. We're sitting at 7.4%. The goal is to have that around 5%. That's kind of the mark where we think we have a little bit of containment going on. So being at 7.4% is a little high, and we'd like to see that come down. We also had a local community testing site over the weekend at the Greendale High School. 800 people came through that testing site within about 16 hours of it being operationalized. However, only 65 of the 800 were from Franklin. So hopefully that means that people are getting tested elsewhere if they have the need or desire to be tested. We also have brought on 3 contact tracers through CARES funding that came to us through the state. And they are up and running and doing casework for us as of the end of last week. And our latest edition will be going live tomorrow doing casework. So that is helping our staff tremendously, because we've also seen in the last maybe 7 to 10 days an uptick in other Category 1 illnesses that we have to respond to, as well as numerous social service referrals. Immunization services are trending up, and our inspection needs from our sanitarians for development are also trending up. So the help from those contact tracers came at the right time. So that's about it on the statistics side. Closer to home, we have the mask executive order that went into place on Saturday statewide. Prior to that, I worked with city leaders to put forth a mask requirement for those working in City Hall, which has been changed to match the executive order that came out over the weekend. So those inside City Hall are required to wear masks unless they meet one of the exceptions outlined in that executive order. And then one last update on the House of Corrections side. They do have some cases in the House of Correction right now, but I wanted to address those after my conversation with the acting administration there, just so that the general public here has an idea of what's going on. So currently there are 2 units that have positive cases in them. There's one unit that has, I believe, about 11 cases right now positive. Those individuals are inmates that have been returned to the House of Correction through a variety of means. being brought back into custody. So they were in the general populace, maybe they broke parole, or maybe they were on parole pending court, and now they're back in custody. So those are individuals that were out in the community, and before they are put back into the general population, they're tested, put into isolation until the test results come back. If they test positive, they're put into the negative pressure dorm for their isolation period. If they test negative, then they are placed with the general population. So that's one group. And then the other group is that negative pressure room. So there were, I believe, 1 or 2 individuals that were from the actual House of Corrections itself that are in there, but also transfers that have come in from the county system. The county downtown is only allowed to hold 10 people that test positive once they cross that 10-person threshold. Any additional inmates that are positive come to us here at the House of Correction because they have those negative pressure dorms to keep people in isolation more safely. So when you see numbers, they're in those 2 populations. It's not within the general population. There isn't an outbreak or anything. They're doing everything correct as far as I'm concerned, and being very, very cautious bringing new people into the system.
Alderman Nelson.
Is that in the Lauder building, or is that somewhere different?
It is not in the Lauder building. That is within their normal, I believe they had 4 dorms that they could turn into negative pressure within their normal dorm structure. The Lauder building has no one in it.
Thank you.
Questions for the director?
Um,
Alderman Wilhelm.
Courtney, when we were dealing with license, we were struggling with approval of events. Are you going to put something together that you can let the council know about this evening, that how we might better address that?
Yeah, so in conversation in the License Committee meeting this evening, there's been an increase in number of businesses that have wanted to do special events in the summer, some small scale, some large scale, and trying to just get some consistency of what we're asking for them from a health and safety perspective in the era of COVID, so that everybody is essentially having the same opportunity to present an event with the same parameters in place. Currently, right now, there are a few businesses that do have orders placed on them restricting live music events due to the increase in crowd size that those events do bring to the table. So those are questions that we still have moving forward. I'm currently working with a few of those entities on ways that we can improve their current COVID plan, so that maybe we can start to move in a direction where they can have some form of that live music back, provided that they're able to have a venue that is providing for safety, whether it's crowd size or physical distancing. Also, the mask mandate that is out right now does require outdoor bars for everyone in an outdoor bar to be wearing a mask. So that does include the umbrella bar. In my estimation, that includes the beer gardens as well. So those people should be masked, and that should help to some degree. I will say, though, the gatherings is a problem in Franklin, not just at establishments, but at people's backyard pool parties and barbecues. I have heard that there was a private prom thrown over the weekend. So just as we were getting to the point where we thought those teen cases were going to come back down, and maybe they were getting ready to start some of their athletic events and practices back up, there's a high likelihood that those won't be happening because the cases are going to go back up in that population. So I think everybody kind of needs to take a good hard look about what they want moving forward, as far as if the in-person school or virtual school, sporting events, not sporting events, outdoor concerts. We need to get this under control at some point. So we have to make a few sacrifices here and there to get the numbers back under control so we can move forward. If we keep at the rate that we're going, the numbers will just keep going up.
Thank you.
Went to a graduation party. One second, Dan. I went to a graduation party at a neighbor of mine a week ago. And before I RSVP'd, I asked her, how many people are going to be there? She said, about 30, but they're spaced out. I said, okay, fine. I said, because I'm not coming if there's going to be more than about 20 or 30, because frankly, I'm in a high-risk category, and there's way too many parties and way too many people with COVID-19, and it's caused by graduation parties, prom parties, after football practice parties. And she said, I've noticed that you've been a little grouchy lately. I said, you want to know the reason why? June 30th, our health department was tracing active surveillance on 21 individuals. 21. On June 21st, they were actively tracing 121. That's why I'm grouchy. That costs the taxpayers money. Just so somebody can have a party? Give me a break. Anytime somebody comes to me and says, I want to have fireworks at my event, no, I'm not approving that. It's costing the taxpayers a lot of money and people are getting sick. So, license committee, if you coming to me and asking me if we should approve a beer garden or something like that, my answer is no, plain and simple. It doesn't take any effort off of the health department. It's no. Makes no sense to approve those things. Sorry. It's the way I feel. Until these numbers come down, I mean, we're tracing 80 people right now. That's outrageous. It's time for us to get a hold of this thing. And I'm not talking about infringing on anybody's rights. I'm talking about being mature adults. We don't need more beer gardens in the city. We don't need fireworks at at Polonia. Lots of places to get a beer. Have a beer at home. Okay, rant's over with. Madam Director.
I believe Alderman Mayer had a comment.
I'm sorry, Alderman Mayer.
Wow, that was great, Mr. Mayor. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's great to see you leading from the start on this thing now. Some people have been saying these things for a while, and still people don't take it seriously. But thank you very much. You did a great job there. And thank you for wearing a mask. I'm watching on YouTube, and I think we can work on the social distancing a little bit more up there, but it's great to see you wearing a mask. Just a couple questions for Courtney. Courtney, are you satisfied with the disinfectant and cleaning program at City Hall for employees and for the public?
I would say it can always be improved. I am not privy to everything that happens, after hours or before I get here in the morning, but I would say high-touch surfaces, the doorknobs, handrails, bathrooms, chairs, could stand, a few more going over during the day. Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I hope you heard that. You can make directions as you need to. Courtney, do we have anyone out on isolation or quarantine at this point?
What do you mean, do we have anybody out?
Employees.
Employees, I cannot divulge that information due to HIPAA, but anybody that would test positive that works for the city of Franklin, if they live within Franklin, we would find out through the surveillance system. If they do not live in Franklin, when they test positive, their local health department would contact them to find out where they would work, and then they would be contacting me. So I would know.
Right, and you can't say any numbers, not divulging any HIPAA, but you can't release any numbers of someone that might be out, or the numbers that might be out?
I'm not comfortable releasing that information, no.
Okay. Is anyone working from home yet?
That I do not know off the top of my head. Some of those decisions are made by individual department heads, so that I don't have an answer for you.
Alderman, the policy is that there's supposed to be no one working from home as a matter of policy.
Okay, thank you. membership up there. No further questions. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
That it? Any other questions for the director? Madam Clerk, election status, please. Thank you, Courtney.
With next week's partisan primary, which is held on Tuesday, we are going to have all of our normal polling locations open. They will be, I'm hoping, fully staffed. We do have PPE products, we have masks and cleaning solution. We did get an extra shipment of pens from the state. So every voter, just as in April, will receive a pen. They will take it through the whole process and take it home with them. We are trying to place the plexiglass barriers where possible at some of the polling locations. We do have electronic poll books at the sports complex, so that is going to be a little trickier, but it worked well in April. We had nothing but compliments. We doubled the width between the distance between the voter and the workers by adding an extra table, so we're going to continue with that. All absentee ballots, we have requests on file from 6,930 voters. Most of those requests were people who online requested them in March for the April election, but checked the box that they wish to receive them for the entire year, or that they are indefinitely confined. We are spending about 5 hours on the phone during the week, during the day. And it's been pretty steady. There are quite a few people who do not recall going online, applying for an absentee ballot, checking the box that they'd like to receive it for a full year, or that they are indefinitely confined, and that they actually received a ballot in April, voted on it, and returned it. We're having to pull up applications. People still don't recall doing that. But unless they give us an indication that they would no longer like to receive it, they will keep receiving them until the category that they selected has passed. So we're dealing a lot with that. The state has issued a memo and then a couple hours later revised it again. So I'm going to give you the summary of mask wearing for voters, with the caveat that at any given moment it's subject to change, and as in April it is subject to change and change again. So municipalities cannot require voters to wear face coverings while at the polls on election day. The legislature is the only ones that can establish individual voting qualifications. And the requirement of wearing a mask to obtain a ballot and successfully cast your ballot is considered a voter qualification. So we will have signs up that we strongly suggest it. The same thing with the poll workers. They will be told to wear a mask unless they fit in the category of not being able to. One of the elements that we run into on election day is a lot of people rely on lip reading when given directions. And so we want to make it very clear to the voter, this of all elections is the most difficult for direction to a voter. They have to, it's called a partisan primary. It's been like that since the early 1900s. It's a primary within a party, so you cannot cross parties, and that a lot of times takes a lot of direction and careful explanation to the voter. And so if there's an element of helping the voter understand something by being able to read somebody's lips, I'm going to look into some clear plastic, so that if they have to lower their mask, to give the explanation that there will be some kind of barrier on the poll workers' part. Also, if in general the state feels that most people can recognize somebody while wearing a mask based on their photo ID, but there may be some voters who, you know, walk in with sunglasses and a mask and may be asked to lower their mask, but there is no requirement to tell the voter to completely remove the mask if it's clear that their photo ID reasonably resembles the voter. Let's see. Oh, so the Circuit Court recently meaning July 29th, issued their ruling on a case that was on appeal related to some voting laws. So we ended up having to change hundreds of our applications that contain the requirement that voters must live in a municipality for 10 days prior to an election. That was changed on July 29th to read 28 days. In addition to all of our forms, which have the number on the front and the number on the back for directions, every single one of the absentee envelopes states that the voter must reside in the municipality for 10 days. We have in excess of 15,000 planned for the future elections and for this election. The ones that have already been mailed to people are fine, but from the 29th on, we have to manually change every single one of those envelopes. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you are one person short in your staff and you are dealing with the element of, why did I get an absentee ballot? We're also dealing with people who are of the belief that the application that a third-party organization is sending them is their ballot. So after you get through all those explanations, changing something on 15,000 envelopes is a big deal. So the other thing with the state mandate was, or the Court of Appeals mandate, was the 28-day change. There's also some photo IDs changes related to college students. Really doesn't affect Franklin dramatically. And then there's also some changes relating to the expiration date. Due to the pandemic, the Department of Motor Vehicles have extended the March 2020 licenses that were planning on expiring. They would allow them to continue to be valid until they didn't give a date, but they're still valid. So just a couple changes that we have to notify the poll workers. The mayor reminded me that people are receiving this third-party postcard, which has our address on it to be returned to. And it appears that from the people who have called, the voter either believes it's from our office or from the state, and it is not. So we've been dealing with that. Just wanted to remind everybody that the last day we mail out absentee ballots is Thursday, and we are open for in-person absentee voting through Friday at 5 o'clock. We've been doing that for 2 weeks, and it is so far so good, worked out wonderfully. And that, and we also have other work that we do. We're in the middle of border review applications and
Common
several
council
other
topics.
things, common council meetings, several other things, so.
Questions for the clerk? Okay, we'll back up. I do have an update for you on City Hall landscaping as part of the remodel project. It is part of the remodel project. You guys authorized a contract to Johnson Nursery for landscaping. That's almost complete, but you'll notice that there's been some changes relative to trees, bushes, and berms around here. Working with Tom Reha and Kevin and Glenn and several others, took down a lot of overgrowth, took down a lot of bushes, a lot of half-dead trees. And so if you look around City Hall, it's a different place. And actually, I'm really pleased with the way it looks. The 2 berms out in front of City Hall are going to be flattened this fall and replaced pretty much with just grass. So it'll be easier to maintain. What we discovered was 25 or 30 years of no maintenance. So now we're back to maintainable. So I hope you're all pleased with it, but you know what? Elmer's glue doesn't work on trees. So it is what it is. So there we go. Questions on that? So we'll move on. Item C, approval of the regular meeting minutes of the Common Council meeting of July 21st. Any additions or corrections?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to reports and recommendations. Item G1, project updates for Ballpark Commons. Mr. Zimmerman got called to an emergency, so he won't be here this evening. So that will be tabled. Item G2 is intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement services. This is a letter terminating the agreement to provide law enforcement services. And then allow the chief to reenact if things change. Do you want to hear from the chief, or is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Yeah,
Chief?
I'll add one update. At about 3:30 today, I received a copy of a letter from Chief Morales, Milwaukee Chief Morales, who sent it to our Wisconsin Chiefs Association and forwarded to me, advising the chiefs that had pulled out of the event that due to recent decisions by City of Milwaukee, Common Council and the Fire and Police Commission, that they reversed some of the decisions that restricted the chief in purchasing and using chemical irritants if necessary for disorderly, unlawful, riotous crowds. And in light of that change of position, he's requesting departments to reevaluate their withdrawal of officers. So I think it's appropriate. Again, I just got this. I would like to have more information from the chief or Milwaukee regarding specific assignments before I would make a final decision. But I advise you that I'm inclined to participate if everything seems to be back to, I'd say, the previous agreement, where our officers would be properly equipped and allowed to take appropriate lawful action if necessary.
Well, this action lets you out and lets you go back in if you want, so we're okay.
Okay?
So the motion is to approve, which is out, but allows you to go back in. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Item G3 is a motion to approve the purchase and installation of the Nelson Systems NextLog system, and there is some financial impact here.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Paul, do I need 4? Yes. Madam Clerk?
Alderman Dandria.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye. Motion carries 6 ayes, no noes, no absent, no abstentions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Item G4 is an ordinance to amend the municipal code to provide for common council boards and commissions and committee members, applicants, and the public remote government meetings attendance. Mr. City Attorney, and I've got a comment on this.
This was discussed at the last Common Council meeting on July 21. I believe at that meeting, I mentioned that I would bring the subject matter up of remote meetings attendance in general municipal codes and whether that's been a practice anywhere outside of COVID-19 times. And the general answer was, amongst municipal attorneys statewide on the conference call, Sheboygan, city of, had a remote ordinance permission, and that dated back a number of years, and it was adopted and started due to common council members' disability and inability to physically attend during a term. I believe there was one other person in a different part of the state who also said they were doing it. Recently, the village of Bayside adopted one. However, it is restricted to the presiding officer making a determination for a particular meeting that such remote attendance is necessary versus it occurring at every meeting. All of, well, nearly all of the, and Fox Point has been looking at a potential code amendment for remote meeting access. The general response from everyone else was in the negative. No, municipal codes don't have ongoing ordinances allowing for remote virtual meeting preparation. Everybody has only been doing it with regard to the COVID-19 circumstances. And as indicated at the last meeting on this subject matter, the thought was from the Legal Services Department that this not be adopted as a, for the time, permanent, unless changed in the future, municipal code amendment, and in lieu thereof, that the remote access be permitted in an extension of the emergency declaration resolution, which is the next item on this agenda.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. My comment on this is somewhat highlighted by what the city attorney just mentioned, that this be for a special circumstance, not for routine. In other words, if I decided that, geez, for the next couple of months, I'm going to go sit on a beach in Tahiti and I'll just call it in. That's not what I would have anticipated this to be used for. It's for a special circumstance where I broke my leg and I can't get in for something like that. There is no language in the ordinance that provides for special circumstance, and whomever has the approval rights. I have no preconceived notion about who would approve what, whether it's the body or a presiding officer. I think we ought to consider that. I don't know that this needs to be acted on tonight, but I think we ought to consider what the purpose would be. I think there ought to be some instance where we really want to attend a meeting, but we can't. So we now have the facilities to do that. Perhaps we ought to take advantage of it. But we ought to consider carefully how we do that. Alderman Wilhelm.
Well, I agree with what the city attorney says, and I would rather we just held off on this and me take something up if we ever get out of this pandemic and put more detail into it. I do have concerns with both this one, G4 and G5, that I'm not sure we're ready with proper video to do them with either way. It's, if you try to watch or be part of the video, we're not doing an in-time Zoom right now. So if you're watching on the live stream, there's, I don't know, a 45-second delay or something. And so it's hard for someone to participate and see what's going on and be timely in their comments if they're watching a delayed video. So I would like to see us, rather than adopt this ordinance, look into upgrading what most municipalities are using for, like Zoom for the pandemic situation. And then that would be in place when we take a future ordinance up like G4 down the line after the pandemic is behind us. That would be my recommendation, or my suggestion.
Well, I'll tell you that that's two separate issues, just to be frank with you. The delay period that you're referring to is a technology issue that relates to the amount of time it takes to process the video. And G4 deals with inbound communications with the body, not outbound with the video.
I understand that.
So it's kind of two separate issues. Technologically, G5 with outbound video, unless you throw a pile of money at it, you're not going to get simultaneous audio and video in time with, it's just not going to happen. Unless you throw a pile of money at it. And by a pile, I mean a pile.
Well, I notice most of the communities are using Zoom meetings, and my thing is if everybody could just be on the Zoom together, we would all be on the same page, but we're not doing audio or visual Zooms. And so what are we going to take to get to that point to bring us up to 2020? I mean, we're behind. As a municipality our size, there are far smaller communities that have that ability. And I think it's important, especially right now, to have that in place.
Well, I'll tell you that we're in violent agreement. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, all the systems integrators that do that kind of work, as Jim will tell you, they're all up to their eyeballs in business, and because we haven't done that until the middle of the pandemic, we're the tail wagging the dog, and we're last on the list. We're working on it, but it's going to be a while, because they're all busy, and we're at the bottom of the list, and we're that much business. So, Alderman Wilhelm, we've got the Zoom licenses. It's a matter of hardware and integration.
That's what I was going to say, isn't, because I've done Zoom with, you know, online with the audio, and I've been invited to lots of Zoom meetings, but we're just not applying it.
Alderman Barber.
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance to move it forward.
On G4. There's a second to that motion? Is there a second? Seeing no second, that motion dies. Is there a motion to table to?
Motion placed on file.
Second. All those in favor of the motion to place on file?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries to place on file. That's without prejudice, though.
Yes.
Okay, move on to G5, which is motion to extend the time period for the technology aspect of the public health emergency.
Move to approve?
Second.
Alderman Wilhelm.
I'd ask this insertion to be allowed for written comment, and I see that's been put in there, but it only provides for the written comment, except for when it's a public hearing. I guess I'd like the rest of council's feedback on, I mean, public hearing is when, during a pandemic, we had concerns where people wanted to be here but weren't comfortable being here. And that's exactly what a public hearing is for. So, in my opinion, I would like to also include written comments to be taken for a public hearing as well, and not exclude, which means they could actually do both. You could be in present or written comment. That would be my suggestions for the bottom of the paragraph on 112.
Mr. City Attorney.
With regard to public hearings, that has always been an exclusion, per recollection, including in the Attorney General Department of Justice opinions dating back into the 1980s, which stated that under certain circumstances, a meeting attendance by telephone would be available for members and such, but public hearings are set forth in Wisconsin statutes with regard to zoning district amendments, et cetera, and the stated concern. On the end of the group, there's another large group, including the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, that always said do not allow for telephone meeting attendance dating back into the 1980s. And specifically also highlighted, do not do it for public hearings because of all the case law, et cetera, with regard to the process and the importance of public hearings and testimony, et cetera.
Question?
Alderman Wilhelm.
City Attorney, are you aware that other municipalities are doing any during the pandemic, though? For public hearing?
My understanding from conference call discussions, et cetera, was that public hearings were excluded. That's what I heard.
Okay. So at this point, you won't really see an ability to insert that based on
Not at this
the law.
point.
Okay,
It
thank
would-
you.
You could do further research specifically on that point, but what I stated on the record here is my thought on it. Also, with regard to the submission of written comments, the way I wrote that provision was that they may be read into the record. All you need is a hypothetical, especially in the electronic world, where all of a sudden, because of some discussion out there in social media, the Common Council receives 1,342 written comments on something, and they're all a word or two different. And then it's not a compulsion to read them into the record. And I didn't put any limitation on that, but my thought was the 3 minutes time limit that applies to in-person public comment in the code would apply to this also. So if the council receives a 53-page written comment, it's the 3-minute limit. Those are my thoughts.
There's been discussions at the ICC about public comment during pandemic via electronic means. And there has been, of the 19 municipalities, including Milwaukee County, there's been no public comments via electronic means. So at least through, what is this? This is August? Through the July meeting. So, Alderwoman Hanneman.
I would like to amend the motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the friendly reminder.
Can you pull it closer to you, Sherry? Thank you.
I move to amend the motion, rather than saying to allow for citizen comments submitted in writing to be read into the record. Rather it say to be entered into the record, for the same reasoning that the city attorney just suggested. It's somewhat conceivable that we could be sitting here reading 50 minutes worth of hundreds of emails. And I think that we could put a policy in place such that comments being submitted through the city clerk could then be distributed prior to the meeting or at the meeting as we come and sit down.
So, is there a second to that?
Second?
Mr. City Attorney?
My thought on that was, what does entered into the record mean? What's the record? You have minutes, so would all these copies accompany the minutes, which stay on file forever? Or perhaps, maybe it should be simply a distribution of copies thereof electronically or paper to the common council members, instead of becoming part of the record, whatever the record may be.
May I?
Alderman Hammond.
My thought is that yes, because if they were to come in person and speak at the microphone, that would still be part of the recorded history of the meeting.
But it's an audio. It's not what could be this, which is maintained as a public record.
I'd recommend just distribute it to the alderman. Madam Clerk?
So I just would like clarification, but I do want to explain one thing which might help what Alderwoman Hanneman is referring to. When there is a council packet, it is available online, and we keep the original for public record. If there is an addition to the packet following the meeting or at the meeting or just prior to the meeting, obviously that doesn't go online until we are able to process it after the meeting. So what we do is, there are some handouts for tonight's meeting. Tomorrow we will scan those in and put them on the website as an addition to this packet. Those also become part of the official record with the packet. I may have just convoluted the whole subject matter, but I guess I'm trying to say, we do save these, we do retain them, we do,
But they were intended to be part of the packet.
that's correct. That's correct, where we don't transcribe public comments and make those part of the official record. You notice in the minutes, we also don't list names, addresses, and a personal interpretation of what someone said, because that's a touchy subject. But if somebody does submit something and ask that it be distributed to the alderman, we do that the next day. So I don't know if that helped or not.
The point is that you don't want to give more weight to materials during this period of time than you would any time in the past or any time in the future. So we need to do this right. Alderwoman Willow.
Well, to me, it seems appropriate to take written comment, and if they're brief enough and keeping it 3 minutes, that seems reasonable to read some of those into the record. I agree, going beyond that, we should just tell people that this is approximately how many words you get, keep it at that or it won't get read. But I'm looking at page 102 and 103. And the second paragraph on page 102 says, as explained below, governmental bodies typically can meet their open meetings obligations while practicing social distancing to help protect the public health by conducting meetings via telephone conference calls if the public is provided with an effective way to monitor such calls, such as the public distribution at least 24 hours in advance of the dial-in information for the call. So you could eliminate maybe the written if you would just allow a call-in number for the public. And my vision of that would be they call in and they get a number, and when you call the number, then it's their chance to speak, and when they're done, they either have to put their phone on mute or hang up. And it's not that much difference than standing up with a microphone, except they're able to do their verbal presentation on the phone. It also says the same thing in the second paragraph. On the next page, on 103, when an opening meeting is held by teleconferencing or video conferencing, the public must have a means of monitoring the meeting. The DOJ concludes that under the present circumstances, a governmental body will typically be able to meet this obligation by providing the public with information in accordance with notice requirements for joining the meeting remotely. So that again refers to giving the public the ability to call in. I guess that makes sense. We have ability to get 40 people on a line, and it's not a big extra cost. And we rarely ever have that many people for a public comment period. When it's full, it's full.
The issue is not the inbound. The issue is when someone chooses to speak or participate. That's when the issue happens. Madam Clerk.
Doesn't it, when an open meeting is held by teleconference or video conference, this really is held in person? Isn't the comment in this written material when there is no one personally in a room, when it's held by teleconference or video conference? My point is the public still can come to this meeting and speak in person, where I'm of the belief, and I'm not the lawyer up here, but that this means by teleconference or video conference and not where they are able to come here and speak in person.
Let me try to move this along. Alderman Hanneman, let me just suggest that the wording be, I'm on the last line of page 111, submitted in writing to be distributed to the alderman for the record.
I will move that amendment.
Second.
Okay, so the motion, where are we at? I want to make sure I'm procedurally correct here.
So we have a main motion to adopt the ordinance, and then we have a
Resolution.
motion.
It's a resolution.
Oh, okay. My notes say ordinance. And then we have a motion to amend the resolution and a second.
All right. On the motion to amend the resolution, thus saying submitted in writing to be entered into the record. I'm sorry. Submitted in writing to be distributed to the alderman for the record. All those in favor of that?
What does for the record mean? How about submitted in writing to the alderpersons?
Period. I'm fine with that. That's your motion?
That is my motion.
Is that your second? Alderman Dandridge?
Yes.
On that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. On the main motion,
As amended.
as amended, A motion to adopt a resolution to amend a resolution in ratification of a proclamation declaring a public health emergency in response to the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, as amended, to extend the time period of the public health emergency until January 5th, 2021, to allow citizen comment period submitted in writing to be distributed to the aldermen.
So moved.
Second.
No,
No.
Oh,
There's
that
already
wasn't
been
it.
So we're good to, so we're not at just,
we're just voting.
Just vote.
He's just reading the motion.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G6 on page 115 is an ordinance to amend 15.30423 of the Unified Development Ordinance, the Franklin Business Park, to allow the Community Development Authority to waive driveway setbacks from interior lot lines. It's, in essence, to allow a land split in the business park, as recommended by the Community Development Authority.
second?
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. As ancillary to that, on page 127, a resolution approving a two-lot certified survey map for the same parcel at 9750 South Oakwood Park Drive.
So moved.
Second?
Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G8 on page 147, the status of Marquette Road Avenue Road Extension. Mr. City Engineer.
So I have prepared a quite extensive, I think, analysis of what's going on, so I won't try to read the whole thing. But to summarize, in March, Common Council directed staff to prepare necessary documents to receive developers' donation of the road right-of-way and engineering specifications for West Marquette Avenue to advertise for bids for a competitive public works project, along with an alternate bid for water and sewer. We've met with the adjacent developers on this project, and to summarize the status, we are at somewhat of a standstill. At issue is, would we, the city, assess for these improvements? So based on that, they may or may not donate engineering plans and specifications. They may or may not donate the right-of-way for the project. So what I'm looking for tonight is some sort of a guidance on plan to assess from the Common Council. I developed what I think are the four options that you have before you. First option is to just instruct the developers to construct this project as part of their development project, as with most other new roads constructed in Franklin. Analysis two, option two, city constructs the project with minimal assistance, so you would just ask for a donation of the right-of-way and the engineering plans from the adjacent developers. Option three, the city would construct the project and special assess all the benefited properties. And the fourth option is really some variation of the other three options. So option one, we've heard, at least I've heard since I've been here, the city doesn't build roads, but upon some research, the city has built roads, and we assess for them. So most recently was the Evergreen Street, and although we didn't assess at the time it was built, it was deferred from the adjacent landowner, and when the developer purchased it, the assessment happened at that time, albeit we reevaluated the amount of the assessment. But I discussed this with Mr. Bennett, and we did find some documents that showed that the city had assessed for previous streets. And I am not aware of what we did with the middle section of Putes. So that question was brought up today, and I don't have an answer for that, for what we did on Putes. If any of you remember what we did for Putes, I would be interested in knowing that. Option two, again, the assumption that they would donate the right-of-way and engineering. If you consider that, then that would leave a project for the city, as I estimate, of roughly $1.2 million. And I'm going to reiterate, I didn't do an in-depth analysis of the cost of the project. I'm basically going what the developer provided when they asked the contractor. It's the option three. This is that the city assumes the entire project. So we budget the entire project. So what would happen is, so the developers who quote-unquote donate right away and engineering plans and such, we would actually fund everything, and then we would reimburse them for that cost. My estimation is that would be roughly almost say a $1.9 million project if the city bore it all and did, and then assess back the property owners, which apparently is what we have done on other projects. So I do have some color exhibits in your packet that illustrate how I, at a first pass, would assess for the water, sewer, roads. Water was the only one that I would assess, that, of course, I could change my mind, but that seemed to be the only reasonable one to assess for length, front footage, if you will. And the other, sanitary sewer, the storm sewer, the road, I would split those up accordingly as you see at the table on page 150. So of the parcels that I would assess, recommend assessing, the two developers, the Habowitz property and the Creative Homes property, would be assessed at roughly $837,000 and $879,000. And then, but even the landowners, the private parcels, single-family residential houses, as low as ones for about $17,000. And notice that I am proposing that we would look at the school, as in my estimation, would be $41,000. We can discuss how those numbers came together later if you want, but the question, after talking with Ms. Stino, is regarding her familiarity with how Wisconsin provides special assessments. And she raised the question, does a city install or pay for new roads infrastructure as part of our normal business process? So it was her opinion, and it seems to make sense that in Wisconsin there's a wide leeway on how we or what method we use to assess. But once you make a method, you pretty much have to stay with that method. When you switch, and I see the city attorney shaking his head. So I guess that would be a question we could discuss. And then option 4 would be some sort of compromise. As you know, we have $750,000 in the budget for the project. Perhaps, we could say maybe our past history is maybe somewhat what we've done for TIDS, where, the city donates a portion of the money and the developer donates the rest or builds the rest. So, you could use that $750,000 as, here's how much money we'll apply towards it, or maybe you want to look at some sort of method where you develop a method of how you would assess, but, limit the assessment that you would do for the adjacent property owners. So, my recommendation would be option A, which is the first option. I'll leave it alone, but I'm sure this is worthy of discussion. And you can see, I did copy, I think it was circa 1979, some of the discussions on previous assessments for roads.
Well, there's your update.
Motion to accept option A.
Is there a second? Motion on the floor. Is there a second? Seeing no second, that motion.
A or option 1?
Well, once again, Mr. City Engineer,
So somewhat confusion with options 1 and A, but, so the option A is this equivalent to option 1.
all right. So let's be clear, option 1, option A, option 1, it's the first option. There's a motion for that. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor. Alderman Wilhelm on the motion.
Option 1, or A, with the developers construct part as their development, as what they do with all roads. We've been down this road already. This is why they won't give us the engineering plans. This is why we couldn't get beyond the meeting, because the original motion didn't say to go out and special assess them. The original motion said, go get the plans and the right-of-way and go out for bid and come back with a price. But then when we had this meeting, they said, we're okay with assessments on the roads we benefit. So if we put a lot, it's on a corner Marquette, or it's on Marquette, assess this for us. But anything that we don't need, and neither developers, they both can construct their projects without Marquette Avenue. They both have alternative accesses. This road has been a need without either developer on the table. It's always been needed to get a direct route to the school for police and fire and to take the traffic out of the neighborhood. So take both developers out of the picture, we have 800 feet of road to a school that the residents have been begging for. Option one will not happen. We all know that. We've been through that. I can't even believe we're going down that road again, because it is a fail from the get-go. And what's interesting is neither developer were invited to come to this meeting or notified that their project, with their money on the table, were notified to come to this to tell you the same thing they've been telling you. It does not financially work. If you make us pay for the roads you want us to put in, the roads you're requiring, the cul-de-sacs and the sidewalks, and the roads we need to build our land, we can't go to the bank and say, and we're going to put in Marquette Avenue. The numbers do not financially work. Developers aren't charity organizations. They never have been. When it comes to business, they're here to at least make some profit. They have both told us they won't make any profit, and that is why we are where we are, once again, because instead of going and getting the right-of-way and the donations and going out for bid, we got behind closed doors, but the council wasn't here, and said, okay, now we're going to assess you again. So I can't even believe it.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Mayor.
Long ago, the developers did say that they would be willing to look at this if we let them phase it in. The council is not willing to do that.
Correct.
It's very clear that the developers will not put this road in. This road is needed. It's a safety issue for the school. It's a safety issue for the neighborhood. It's been needed all along. No other school in the city has this type of situation. We've talked about this long enough. It's time that we move forward, with a plan that can actually be realistic. And option one is not it.
Alderman Nelson.
Looking at this again and looking at a little more detail with the budgetary, I thought almost option two was what we all agreed upon last time as being acceptable to move forward with. So basically, what changed? Is it just the numbers changed, or? Mr. City Engineer, just ask if you know, was it just a?
I guess, and I did listen to the meeting from that previous meeting. I don't recall that being the clear direction. If that's a clear direction, then I'll carry that forward this time.
I know there's a motion on the floor, but I'd like to, if that one fails, then I'll have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. The motion is option one. Alderman Dander. You know, I do have a question, and Glenn and I did speak earlier this afternoon. I know, and I hear the comments in regards to that this road is needed for safety reasons, but it's been 20, 30 years, and it's never gotten any traction, as well as the school district has made comments that they really don't need it. But the people and the neighbors around it are saying they need it. So I'd really like to hear from the school district that we're trying to build this road for, and to say they, you know, to hear that they really need this and come to the table. But I don't think we're going to hear them or hear it from them. I also understand the predicament that we're in. And Glenn, we spoke about possibly special assessing the parcels with a deferral, but then special assessing all the parcels on both sides of the development. So it would break down that $1.2, $1.3 million to about 18,000 per lot if there's 70 lots. Have you looked at that potential option? So we can dilute that large cost, or we look at, do we take this 750 that we've budgeted and use that like we've done in regards to special developments in TIDS, use that as seed money, and the rest is borne by them. You know, I'm trying to think out of the box to see how it does, but
Sure.
I'm also worried about precedents and how this looks, and there's a city council and also a city administrator that can, I don't want to stray, but I want to see if there's an option too.
So I believe.
Mr.
you're-
City Engineer?
So I believe.
You
you're-
have to be very, 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 very careful with the words you use, because definitions are important. There's a couple of words being used in this particular development that have had their definitions changed. One of them is the word benefit. The other one is accessible. The other one is accessible. The word benefit has been changed here to be very narrowly defined to the scope of exactly touching the roadway, as opposed to using the roadway. It's very important because the developers have come to believe, through whatever method, through whatever sources, that the word benefit means only that their homes, their lots touch the roadway. That I don't care if you use the roadway for some other lot, that's not a benefit, when in fact that is a benefit. So similarly, assess and accessible have been changed the same way. So be very careful with the way you use the words. The words must be used in the broad sense, not the narrow sense. The narrow sense is used in some people's vernacular in this discussion. The city sense has to be the broad sense. It's very important.
I
I
would,
mean, does everybody understand the definitions?
I would agree with that. So when you look at how I propose that they would be assessed, they're assessed based on benefit. That's why I propose that the school would have some benefit. I propose that each development, in my opinion, needs this road equally, because previous direction to each development has been that they can't develop unless Marquette goes through. So that's why I propose that the benefit to each development was equal, regardless of the connection. Alderman Dandry and I did discuss maybe some other ways to look at benefit. Maybe it'd be benefit per parcel. You know, one's got more parcels than the other, and we can have that discussion too. But I do agree benefit should be more broadly defined than just linear footage, which is how The current code establishes how most of our water and sewer utilities have been, although it's not required, but it says if you do use per footage, it demonstrates how you do the math, but it does allow you for other methods to define benefit.
Now, one other point that I need to make. Some people may know that I have fairly regular conversations with the various members of the school district, specifically the school superintendent. They don't need the road, they don't want the road, they're not asking for the road. Their safety issues are different than a roadway. The superintendent has said in public, on the record, that they have had no issues with the service of the fire department or the police department. They get excellent service to that school, and they're fine with it. They've also said that they will not pay an assessment for a roadway to that school because they get just fine service. So, you know, let's be careful about what we talk about here. Mr. City Attorney.
Along those lines, I would not broadly construe benefit. Under Wisconsin law, an assessment is a special assessment. And when I first saw the draft of the action sheet, I contacted the city engineer and basically said, I don't have time to go through all of this with everything else ongoing. But with regard to the special assessments, the method of how properties are assessed needs to be looked at in detail, because my recollection of where the last meeting with staff and the alderwoman and developers was, city engineer was going to look at methods of specially assessing properties within the area. In general, with regard to special assessments under Wisconsin law, there are a few categories. Front footage, area assessments based on size of the property, unit assessments. There are 70 lots. They all have the same use. They all, based on the facts of the matter, are specially benefited in the same manner, so each pays the same amount. Those are your general categories. There is an ability to create a different method of distribution, but it has to be equal for everyone being specially assessed. And the method has to be based on some facts. And so proceeding further with reviewing special assessments, that's the way to go. And in League of Wisconsin Municipalities Special Assessment Manual and former or Marquette Law School law review, lengthy detailed articles, there are statements within those policy manuals and legal opinions that you as a municipality are not bound because to some specific method of specially assessing because that was done previously or whatever, but there should be a factual basis for changing that policy, so.
So let's talk about business for a minute. Certainly, these businesses, and Alderwoman Wilhelm mentioned it earlier in her comments, you know, they need to make some money on this, and they should make some money on this. But part of that is cash flow. They gotta have cash flow to build these subdivisions. And sometimes we have the interest in putting some demands on these developers to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And should these developments go in, we want to accomplish having Marquette Avenue put in. So we need some leverage to make that happen. So we do whatever we can, whatever requirements we can. And one of the requirements that we were going to impose was, thou shalt not build the following 6 lots until Marquette Avenue gets put in. You know, yeah, maybe that was a good requirement. But if you look at it, thou shalt not have any cash flow until you expend money to pay for something that you don't want. Maybe that wasn't wise. Maybe we ought to reconsider that requirement and allow 6 lots to be built right away to allow the cash flow to do something that we want, which is construction of a road that we shouldn't be paying for in the first place. Wouldn't that be reasonable? What do you think?
I'll comment when you're ready to give me the floor.
Sounds like a good business decision to me. Alderman Wilhelm.
The reason why we put that on there is there was no guarantee. The council is, it was in the resolution, and we all voted on the resolution. And I'd appreciate not being interrupted when I have the floor, because then it looks like that I'm interrupting you, and I don't want to do that, please. So back to my train of thought. The reason why we didn't allow the first phase of the one developer, it would have been unfair to the other developer, who wasn't given the same privilege, and we didn't want to increase the traffic through the neighborhood, and there was no guarantee that they would come in and do the other section that would help us get Marquette done. So there were a lot of reasons why we put that in place. One of the reasons I ran again is because I knew as soon as I didn't run, that would be the first recommendation back, was to be allow that traffic from those few lots in the neighborhood, and we'd never see Marquette Avenue. That was one of the main reasons why I kept my foot in the door, to get this neighborhood what they've been begging for years. Now, there's a comment in here that a representative from the school said this. I'd like to see that in writing, that the school and the school board has no interest in providing increased or benefit traffic flow up there, because the parents sure want it. And it's not just the parents that are going to Pleasant View School. It's all the people that come up there, the scout groups. Why do you think we had a scout group come here and take the project on? Because they come from all over the city, even outside of the city. They come in, and it's just a congested mess up there with these narrow roads and buses mixing with kids and no sidewalks. It's a shame that we cannot provide this for this school, for 500 kids plus the other ones that go there. There was a comment made that 20 years we've gotten no traction. That's not true. We built Marquette Avenue from 49th to the school. I would say that was a nice chunk that we put in, so I wouldn't say that's no traction. And we did that because we saw the need to get some traffic relief up there. That was outside of the developments, because the property was tied up, Patrica's property was tied up in a trust, and the family members weren't ready to sell that, and so city attorney and I went and helped negotiate that and got that right away. And that's how we got that in, and that's how we paid for it. And there's no big special assessments on that. And Evergreen, we barely got the money back for that. So it's misleading to the public to say that, oh yeah, we special assess for that, because the numbers don't pan that one out at all. The other thing is, we're building this road for the school district. We're not building this road for the school district. We're building it for the citizens of Franklin, the neighbors, the police and fire, who have both opined on that this would allow a few more seconds to the school. That's been in writing before this council. Let's talk about cash flow. Do any of you know one of the reasons why I wanted an update on this is because this developer's engineer sent an email to a countless number of people. I wish I would have brought it. I could have read them all off in City Hall and said, hey, our wetland permits are going to expire. We spent a lot of money on going through all that permitting process. No one responded to them. I asked the city attorney for a copy of that email. I talked to them directly. No one responded. We sat for 5 months and we let their DNR permits expire. That's cash they won't get back. The engineering design of this road's cash they won't get back. The property money they bought the property, they won't get that back. The parcels are basically, they're just sitting there. In the meantime, we wasted 5 months to go right back to where we were years ago. We've not gotten the building development that could have happened, which could be paying for this road and giving us building permits and all the impact fees that come with that. There has been so much time in this council action sheet to try to find ways to not do this project, and there is nothing in there that helps us find a way to do this project. I don't know what it is, what the literal roadblock on this project. When the developers say, hey, we're to the table, we're gonna donate the land, we're gonna donate the engineering, we're here for special assessments for properties that does benefit per what the city attorney says, and we've done nothing toward that. And we have the ability to even look at impact fees for the walkways, and not one person has considered that in here. I asked that to be added into this council action sheet.
That is.
We are not working toward getting this done. We are not working the best interest of the residents. We are not doing what they've asked us to do. And if you're all okay with that, I don't think any of us should be sitting here representing the city. Because this is a shame that we're doing this. We have the ability to do this. We are so bound up by trying to get 800 feet of road into a school. If we're the city, a $25 million budget, and we can't put in 800 feet of road to a school that can also bring us tax base and work together, you want to talk about why the city has a bad name? Do you know that those developers aren't very happy? Do you know that engineering firms are not very happy? Do you know that this has been on the public document with many developers sitting in this audience watching us do this project? It should be option 2. And it should be a combination of the variations of some of the above. It should be option 2, that the city constructs the project and remove the word with minimal assistance, because I think the donation of the right-of-way and the engineering plans from the developer and their willingness to be special assessed for some of the things like the stormwater basins that they will benefit from, and the fact that we have impact fee money we could use to help this project along. All of that should be where we are. Not going back and trying to tell the developers, you're gonna do this, because they've told us over and over right here that they won't do it if that's what the figures are gonna come out to. They cannot even get a bank to back them with that.
Mr. City Attorney.
Just with regard to the Alderwoman's statement, and she also put it in writing about no response to some email, Alderwoman Wilhelm was carbon copied on there too, as was everybody. The email was addressed to the city engineer.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Madam Clerk, can you read it back, please?
Alderman Barber moved to direct staff to proceed with option 1 as outlined in the Common Council meeting packet, which requires developers to pay for and construct infrastructure for the West Marquette Avenue Road extension between South 49th Street and South 51st Street, seconded by Alderwoman Hanneman.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Dandria.
No.
Alderman Mayor. You say no.
Yes.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
No.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
No.
Alderman Barber. Alderman Nelson.
No.
Motion fails. 5 noes, 1 aye. Any other action on this item?
Mayor,
Alderman Wilhelm.
I guess I'd like to go back to the original motion on March 17th, where the Common Council directs staff to prepare the necessary documents to receive the developer's donations for the right-of-way and engineering specifications for West Marquette Avenue, and advertise for bids for a competitive public works project, along with the alternative bids for adding water and sewer. In addition, that assessments, or whatever the term is to look for the use of impact fees for the length of all walkways.
Not have an agreement outlined to allow the city to accept donations for the road right-of-way and bidding documents.
I'm sorry?
That flies in the face of paragraph 3.
What do you mean?
Read paragraph 3 on page 147.
What is
First page of the action sheet.
147? What about it?
Page G8, page 147. It says,
I'm looking at it.
there was a conference call with the developer on April 6, 2020. Staff followed up with Lynch Engineering, who was hired and working in cooperation with both developments on multiple occasions. To summarize the status, this issue is at a standstill because the city and the developers do not have an agreement outlined to allow the city to accept donations for the road right-of-way and bidding documents. At issue is the city's lack of direction on assessments to the developers for the completion of the project. So reiteration of the old
Mayor, if you would let,
motion.
if you took the floor from me right in the middle of a motion, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm fully aware of what the council document says. I know exactly what happened. I've been studying this for 9 years. I got it. I know what's happening. I know that that paragraph says that they can't move forward is because he went to them and told them, the council said to special assess them. And they said, wait, we're not going to give you the property, give you all of our engineerings, and have this open-ended, unknown special assessment. We're okay with some special assessments for the ones we're benefited, but you can't give us a figure.
So let me get you some more information. Mr. City Engineer.
If I may correct that statement, I did not go to them and say, we will special assess. The question that they posed to us, before we give this to you, will you special assess? And I can't give them direction.
So far, I haven't added anything about special assessments into my motion. So far, I've asked them to prepare the documents, which means write up a document that says, we'd like to have your right-of-way engineering, and we'd like to also get the right-of-way. That requires right-of-way transfers for the city to be able to build on the property and use impact fees. Those are the documents that the intention is here. So you have the right-of-way from the developers for the road with the engineering documents to build it. Is there any questions with that part of the motion?
No questions on that part. I'd like to hear the second part.
Okay. The next thing, the reason why we did the alternate bid for water and sewer is because that was something you, Mr. Morrow, asked me to do during the last motion, because you felt if we broke out the water and sewer, we could figure out what was sort of their benefit and what we could pay for as far as out of our water and sewer budget or whatever. That's why you wanted it that way. I did that at your request. Do you have any concerns with that?
So if the city were to pay for it, finance will ask me for that information. So I think I'm still on the same page.
Okay. The next part I started to add in was, because once we get the right-of-way, we can qualify for park impact fees, which we say we keep needing to use. Now, there are all kinds of things with this, because it's my understanding there are even retaining walls and all kinds of things they have to put these sidewalks in. So all of these costs are part of the road, the design, the development for the walkways that apparently we've requested on both sides of the street as well.
So that line I did add to the description. So if you look in option 2, the sentence directly below the table discusses that we could possibly do an impact fee.
Okay, so then included in the motion would be that the city would also look at the application of impact fees to cover the pedestrian accesses throughout the entire project. Okay. And Mayor, I have the floor. I'm trying to make a motion. I'm trying to work this, and you're up here telling Alderman Nelson that his project's in jeopardy while we're making this motion. That is uncalled for and out of line. I'm calling you out on it. Do not play this project against his project, because they both deserve to be funding, and we'll let him make that argument when it comes up. Do not do that in the middle of a motion to me. I'm asking for that respect. And now we start over again with me trying to get my train of thought, because I'm once again interrupted trying to make a motion. Okay, so now we're looking at cutting some of the costs. In addition to those calculations, the developers fully realize they will probably have a couple lots that would meet the benefit that the city attorney talked about. And that was one of the lots, Mr. Morrow, that you said they could get in if they changed their development plan, and they've changed that just for you to put that in. They didn't have that. You told them, if you change this a little bit, you could squeeze one more lot in here. That wouldn't even been on Marquette Avenue had you not had them do that. That was your change to their plans. So they're okay with, now that you squeezed them out a lot, that you can special assess them for one side of the road or whatever. You can't hit them up for 50th Street and Marquette, because we don't assess for both sides of the road. And I don't know exactly, it's been a long time since I looked at the plan, but I think Rick Prisbella has a couple. He also has a couple lots that are directly on the existing Marquette Avenue, which we put in and never got any money back from, which still needs to be. So there are some special assessments on the lots that sit right on that section that we built. Yeah.
I apologize, I'm starting to lose some of your train of thought. May I suggest that I think that you're asking that we pursue option 2. So all we're really asking for the developers from is the donation of the land and the plans. And then I think I'm hearing you say that you would like to pursue the city paying everything else with special assessments, well, I take it back, with impact fees or other funding sources.
That is, but because the direction wasn't clear the last time around, I feel like I can't just say option 2. I want to detail it out so everybody's on the same page with this. Now, I listened to the finance meeting, and Alderman Nelson asked the finance officer, what kind of money was in the general fund. The reply was $8 million in the general fund. So we can do this project, $750,000 in the budget already. Take out the sidewalks section of this, take out, you know, some of the other things that might be calculated for their water and sewer. And we should be able to do this project at a reasonable price and get this done and quit wasting staff time and alderman time and people's time and stop the arguing and just please build the road. You know, the city attorney said, get Marquette. Can we get Marquette? Can we all come together and finally finish this project, please? For the safety of the kids, even though it hasn't happened before. There could be an accident. There could be. I can tell you that our director of administration knows the narrowness of those roads. She was out there. So if there's not any more clarification that's needed, my motion is for number 2, scratching out with minimal assistance, because that just makes it sound like we're not getting any help. The city motion for the city to do all of those, for the city to construct the project. The donations are right, just like the original motion was. With the clarification that we do the sidewalk and those other things that I pointed out to cut some of the costs down for the city. I'm done.
Okay, I heard Alderman Mayor second. Alderman Dandria, then Alderman Barber.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question in regards to the discussion that we had regarding special assessment. I would like something added to Alderwoman Wilhelm's motion that we look at the special assessments as the city attorney discussed, of possibly putting the special assessments based on a unit or the number of units, that we can spread this out more so it's more palatable, that we can recoup some of the expense. And so I'd like the city engineer, the city attorney, whoever staff that needs to sit down with the developers and come up with a plan that's going to be acceptable, but with the understanding that there's going to be a special assessment.
An area assessment.
Area assessment, yes. I think it can be done. And that was my preface and my concern right from the get-go as I talked to the city engineer earlier today. So I'm asking that something can be added, that we also look at, I just don't want the original motion. I want to make sure that, because that's where the problem came in with engineering. They didn't know how to handle the assessment. We can't go to the same, back to the same problem. So I want to make sure that we work on that special assessment problem.
Mr. City Attorney.
It was 100% clear to me from not simply the last meeting with staff and the alderwoman and the developers, but probably the 2 or 3 meetings before that, developers, and the final number was the roughly 40,000 special assessment for one lot in each of the developments, 40,000 respectively. And if there was a special assessment more than that approximate amount, there would be no donation of land and no donation of the plans, which is what option 2 motion is. So I don't see that as a viable amendment to this motion.
Mr. City Engineer.
I would suggest to you that what Alderman Dandry is proposing would be more option 3, option C.
Yes.
Alderman Barber.
My concern was raised by Alderman Dandria about the special, or the area assessment. I'd like to see some of that. I'd like to see how that's going to play into this.
Alderman, Mr. City Attorney.
And I just mentioned categories of special assessments used under the law. I have had no involvement, and I don't know if the city engineer has looked at an area assessment, and an area assessment has to have the special benefits. And an easier example would be is if every new of the 70 approximate lots had no access to other public roads, but for this extension, then perhaps then you do the unit assessment or area assessment. But any assessment here is going to take a detailed review process by the city engineer and staff.
Alderman Wilhelm.
City Attorney, would you please again say clearly into your microphone what the developers have said about area assessment, special assessment? What will they do or not do if we go beyond the lots that they believe are, in their opinion, viable by law as assessment?
In general, per recollection at the meetings, the developer said we don't need the extension of Marquette Avenue for access to our to-be newly developed properties. We have other access roads to reach them. And that, in general, I heard that their position would be they're not specially benefited.
And they said they would not do what if we did the special assessment, which is what they're trying to...
Not donate the land and not donate the plans.
Okay, this is the closest we've ever gotten to getting Marquette in. If we don't do this, we've wasted 5 months of this year. I don't even see how, if you do all the special assessment and calculation, and it'll even move forward this year anymore. So then you can play around with the budget. We can argue with the budget all next year. You just want to just keep dragging this out. Some of us just aren't understanding what the developers are saying. There's a substantial value to the city. And if Mr. Bennett was here, he'd tell you what we had to buy the right-of-way. For Evergreen, we had to buy the right-of-way. For the other section of Marquette, that small section. And we're just kind of ignoring the fact that they're willing to come to the table and work with us. They're just saying, each individual developer can come in, and the point was proven when the mayor said, hey, we should let them go ahead with it. Doesn't that tell any of the people that think that they need to assess them for the road, that if the mayor says that we can go ahead and let them build the lots, that they don't need Marquette? That's kind of pretty clear. So, the developers at this point might not even go through with this anyway. They're pretty fed up. They've tried really hard. They were forced to put their finances together to work to put a road and design a road on behalf of the city. Who makes the developers do that? Two developers that have two completely LLCs forced to design a road on behalf of the city. They've been really good to work with. So we have a motion on the floor. I guess I'd ask the clerk if she would read the option 2. And make sure we're clear with.
Well, the question I have is, if they don't need the road, why aren't they building their subdivisions?
Do you want me to answer that?
No, it's a rhetorical question.
Well, it has a
because
solid answer.
Because I've been hearing all night about they don't need the road. Why aren't they building the subdivisions? It's a rhetorical question. It doesn't need an answer. There's a motion on the floor. There's been a request for an amendment, but there's been no second to that. So, Madam Clerk, let's do the roll call on,
Well,
go ahead and read the motion, please.
well, I did get the motion,
rather
and now she
complicated.
said read option 2, but the motion that I have is move to direct staff to prepare the necessary documents to receive developers' donations for the road right-of-way and engineering specifications for West Market Avenue, and to advertise for bids for a competitive public works project, along with an alternate bid for a competitive public works, I'm sorry, it's repeating myself, along with an alternate bid for addition of sewer and water, and for the city to look at the application of impact fees for the length of the pedestrian way.
Is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
Is that your second, Alderman Mayor?
Yes, sir.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
No.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Alderman Dandria.
Aye.
Motion carries. 5 ayes, 1 no. No absent, no abstentions.
Thank you.
Move on to G9, which is resolution for a change order in the amount of $8,186.06 for Pleasant View Pavilion flat work.
So moved.
No.
I made the motion.
Is there a second? Come on, folks, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. City Engineer.
At your table, there is a revised change order 3. So instead of $8,186, it's $8,565. The difference is, instead of putting plates on the square downspouts that are there, they're actually taking them off and replacing with different downspouts so that DPW staff can get it underground.
Mr. Ratzenberg.
Mr. Mayor, the current appropriation for the Pleasant View Park Pavilion has been exhausted. So staff is recommending that the motion then cause the appropriation to come from either the Fund 46 Capital Improvement Fund contingency appropriations, or to repurpose one of the other park appropriations.
Where do you want it from?
I would suggest it comes from one of the other park appropriations.
Which one?
The land acquisition is the one that looks like it won't get used.
Alderman Wilhelm?
It's fine.
Alderman Nelson? Okay, from the Land Acquisition Fund. This requires 4 votes, right?
Well, it's not a budget amendment, it's just the motion, it's just that we know what appropriation is coming from.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Those are damn nice downspouts. G10 on 169 is resolution imposing conditions and restrictions for a mega media exchange. Before we vote on this, I will tell you that this is one of those items that at some point in the future, when we modify the Unified Development Ordinance, this will turn into a staff review and approval. Is there a motion to approve? Alderman Nelson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G11, page 187, a resolution for conservation easement for Suzanne and Scott Mayer. Alderman Nelson.
I'd like to make a motion to table this till the 18th, the next meeting on the 18th, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I did have a concern.
Alderman Wilhelm.
I had a concern about and I know this is typical boilerplate language for the conservation easement, but there is a unique feature on this area that is not on most other areas. This is in the vicinity of the Milwaukee County State Natural Area Snowmobile Trail. And if we don't allow the people to operate a snowmobile on frozen ground, they won't be able to get their snowmobile to that state natural trail. And so I would like to consider removing the operate snowmobiles in the next resolution when it comes back.
And Heath, you're taking notes? Okay. Mr. City Attorney?
Just for information, I know there were emails between the mayor's attorney and staff, and I was copied on that. And it wasn't standard form on a quick read with changes were made, and I know it was, I believe that entire provision about motorized vehicles was deleted on the redraft, and I wrote back, no, why would, or at least I talked to Mr. Martinez Montalva about it, and he brought it up, and and then it showed up as a redraft, and it was back in. But I heard no statement as to why or anything. So that certainly can be brought or put back in.
Well, before we,
Why is this being tabled?
Alderman Nelson?
At the request of the mayors.
Oh, okay.
Alderman Wilhelm?
I believe the request of the mayor was the recent 2020 jurisdictional determination that they do not, it's very similar to the Copart situation, where they have non-jurisdictional wetlands, which means no DNR jurisdiction, and no city can hold them to that. I have no idea what's been calculated for wetlands and what hasn't been, but the question about the jurisdictional findings would apply as it did with Copart, and I think that was where the concern came up after listening to all of the conversations about the Copart and them not having to protect wetlands based on new laws with DNR. I don't think they had this jurisdictional determination until spring of this year, so just a few months ago. So that was why they wanted a little more time to look at that.
All right, well, it's already been tabled, so. G12, 209, resolution to design the 116th Street Trail. This is, didn't we vote on it? Yeah, we did.
Just table.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Well, let's do it loud and proud. All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Dan?
Yes,
Yell aye.
I did it.
All right, well, okay. All right, we believe you. G12,
Well, maybe we should go back to that Felix topic where we should come into the 21st century with our technology and Zoom or Microsoft Teams or something, so our video, audio could work better.
oh, don't say teams. Don't say teams, that doesn't, no. Anyway, okay, G12, resolution to design the 116th Street Trail. This is Mr. City Engineer.
So within the next week, possibly 2 weeks, we expect that the governor will announce the TAP grants award winners. It's not official, but I do not anticipate that our trail will appear on that list. And we were unsuccessful on the local stage with the Milwaukee MPO, and so it went to the state, and looks like it's not going to advance either. So there is a project we can start the design, and we have a not-to-exceed contract from Grave. Mary Beth Pettit with Grave has been most helpful in looking at this project, and we feel that she's very capable in helping us through this project. If you should so choose, as of now, the estimate for the construction is roughly 1.5 million.
And this will handle our,
This will significantly help some of our issues with the park impact fee.
through what year? Peg?
Through this year, and through next June, basically, for the design.
Oh,
Alderman Nelson,
I was just gonna make the motion to approve option A.
is there a second?
Second.
Alderman Wilhelm.
Oh, I was just saying, in addition to the sidewalk money for Marquette, we should be in good shape with that in this one, so.
And the sidewalk money for Loomis Road. And the sidewalk
It
money.
just depends when those get committed, so we have to commit by the days that the.
We're
fees are
committed.
gonna
I
go.
can tell we're committed.
Officially, contractually committed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Probably should put a
Motion carries.
deadline
Gotcha, Dan. G13, page 221, installation of lights for Ryan Meadow subdivision. Alderman Nelson.
Motion to approve. Direct city engineer to order installation of lights. Be option A. A as in Adam.
Even though there's no B.
Second.
Mr. Ratzenberg.
Mr. Mayor, I'm curious from the resolution or the action here, it appears in finance that the city will actually cut a check for $13,000 and some change. And if that's correct, I know of no appropriation for that, so then the council would have to tell me what appropriation they're using.
Mr. Morrow?
Could be contingency, but I don't know what appropriation they're using for this expenditure.
I would recommend contingency, and it will be reimbursed with a credit from the developer's letter of credit. So I apologize, I thought I made that.
It's listed here on a fiscal note.
Well, it is listed to come from, well, Mr. Ratzenberg's making a point too. So that's- Glenn?
We don't have an appropriation for developers' letter of credit. That would be a source of funds, not an appropriation for use of funds.
Glenn, Mr. Ratzenberg's making a point.
Yes, sir.
So we could use, if the council so chooses, we can use the capital improvement fund contingency funds. There are available resources there.
That would be the source of the funds, Mr. Nelson. Alderman Nelson.
Thank you.
Capital improvement
Yeah.
contingencies.
Because I didn't see it.
All those in favor?
Thought I made it.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G14, page 229, agreement to allow a grinder pump for a home at 10609 St. Martin's Road. Alderman Nelson.
Motion to approve option A.
Hey, Glenn, we quit doing that. Option A with no option B.
Option B is provide further direction to staff.
It's not labeled that way.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Here we go, fun one. G15 on page 233, direction to staff regarding Putes Road. Mr. City Engineer.
So, as I explained to folks back in the day, the federal highway gets its funding through the gas tax, and the gas tax gets split up to each state, and each state sends the money out. Milwaukee MPO has an area.
MPO.
Metropolitan Planning Organization has a MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, that receives a special pot of money each year. Back in the day, you could almost count on an earmark, and every so many years, you could plan on a project. Federal Highway has changed the process. They require that every round, every 2 years, this pot of money be looked at competitively with all the projects in the region. And this Putes Road failed this past year, as you know. Not quite sexy enough compared to other projects, and quite honestly, I don't know that it could ever come to the level to compete with some of the other projects that are going on within the area. So if you would like for Putes Road to proceed, let's plan on it in a near future project. We'll have to borrow for it.
Well, wait a minute.
If we
What-
intend-
What do you, when you say Pute's Road,
So-
which section?
So there are two sections that we're looking at. One is from 27th to roughly 42nd Street, and there is 76th to St. Martin's Road. So if you should choose to self-fund one or both of these sections, I'm proposing that maybe you would self-fund both sections. Maybe we shouldn't try to add Pute's Road to our road program this year. So if you would like to,
But wait a minute. Sorry, Glenn. I'm just trying to be clear because
Sure.
we got, right now, this year, you only planned on doing a small section of 27th to, I want to say like
I forget the road, but
32nd Street.
yeah, it doesn't even get to 31st Street, so. Or
So
30
that's the only piece you're going to
30
do?
No, it doesn't get to
Yorkshire.
35th, excuse me.
Yorkshire.
Yorkshire Road,
Yeah.
please, thank you.
Yeah. But it's that much.
Yeah, and all we were really going to do is we're planning to pulverize the pavement and do it as part of a road program. But if we were to do that,
840.
the pavement would be good for the next at least 20, if not 30 years, but it wouldn't be wide enough and address to the other issues that really need to be addressed as part of the project. So if you plan to self-fund a project in the future, we'd recommend that you remove Pute's Road from the road program this year and add two other roads that are roughly the equivalent price. Bosch Lane from 92nd Street to a Termini, and Fitzsimmons Road from 31st Street to a Termini.
Okay, so what's the plan for Pute's? The east section, which is what you're,
We would do pothole patching and make it last a few more years.
and then you're thinking that STP funds or something would come along in a few years?
No, I'm thinking that we, the city, would borrow funds to self-fund the project. If you see a memo on the next page, on page 234,
Yeah, which caused me to have a heart attack.
so these are the prices that a consultant helped us estimate these projects. So the 76th Street, from the section from 76 to St. Martin's, roughly 1.3 miles is 8.7 million. The 27th to Huntington Park Drive, roughly 42nd Street, is 6.1 million. So I think the idea is that we would probably do the eastern section first, but that could be up for debate and discussion. During
Now,
budget.
Madam Director of Administration and Mr. Director of Finance, have you had a chance to look at those numbers? Paul's got that deer in the headlights.
Well,
Peggy's saying, hell no.
this memo was dated July 31st, so relatively recently. Finance Committee has looked at a 10-year projection of city borrowing for capital projects. And
Yes, Mike. Join us at the table, would you?
the memo that the city engineer drafted is dated very recently, so finance has not had a detailed look at this. However, in June, the Finance Committee looked at a 10-year projection of future debt borrowings on the part of the city, and neither of these projects were included in those projections. The projections that Finance looked at in June suggested the city would exceed its internal debt limits for about 4 or 5 years in the near term of the 2020s. And as I look at this right now, there's another $14+ million of borrowings that would be required for that. I would suggest it would require some additional financial review.
Oh, Glenn, we've been talking for years about the west leg of Pute's Road, and that was on the schedule, I thought, for next year, wasn't it, Mark?
Correct, Mayor.
Alderman Dandry?
Correct, Mayor, but that it was put on the request.
Your mic, Mark. Your mic, Mark.
It was put on the request for the federal funding, but
Correct.
as the engineer mentioned, that project was not chosen. So it's up in the air. Does it need to be done? Gravely, it needs to be done. We've got to find a solution.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir. Alderman Mayor.
Yes, it absolutely needs to be redone, and we've got to find a solution to this.
Yeah, with apologies to Alderman Hanneman, the western leg of Putes is, in my view, far worse than the eastern leg. But relative to the issue at hand today, I'm not necessarily a fan of doing Bosch Lane, sorry, John, but the other street, I got a senior moment going on here. Fitzsimmons is worse than Bosch, so, I don't know.
I believe staff told me that both of these are rated 2s.
Oh, really? I said corrected. So, but the Putes Road conversation's gotta be had. Alderman Hanneman.
Do you happen to know the rating on the eastern leg of Putes?
I do not.
I'm not quite sure how to put this, other than looking a gift horse in the mouth, maybe, and not wanting to do that. Up to this point, have the residents along Putes Road from 27th to 35th or 42nd Street, has there been any sort of communication with them as to whether or not they really want that stretch of Putes Road widened? And I'm saying this because, and understanding there's the parking issue at Kayla's Playground, but I would say a good 50% of the calls I've received since coming into this chair have been speeding on Putes Road. And I'm foreseeing that if that's widened, and without having the crest of the hill there at 31st Street somehow leveled off a little bit, it's going to be an even bigger problem. I mean, yes, do I want to have a much nicer road there? Yes, we have the potholes, not necessarily to the degree. I do agree that the western edge of Putes is probably worse than the eastern edge. But I also see that there's probably, oh my gosh, there's a plug here. I'm sorry, there's not a whole lot of area along Putes Road for new development up to that point, because we've got the forest preserve there on the south side. The majority of the lots along the north side are already built or wetlands or whatever. So I'm having a hard time, being a little bit new to this project and thought, understanding the benefit of that expense 7 or 8 years down the road. I think many people would be happy to see that leg just repaved and the potholes filled, and if it's going to be a 20 to 30 year, yes, I understand there are some subsidiary issues with drainage and whatnot going on in that area, but I think in terms of the value and the bang for the buck and the neighborhood aesthetic, so to speak, I'd like to see that maybe done sooner than later with the lower cost.
Okay. That's the guidance I'm looking for.
By the way, since I do have a dog in this hunt, but sometimes there is a value in potholes, as maybe Alderman Nelson can testify to. It does slow people down because they don't want to drop their transmission or their.
Potholes are bad, for the record.
In your district they are, but they do slow people down, and they're the equivalent of speed bumps as depressions, but because what you get once you get a nice smooth surface, another 10 miles an hour, so that's what it is.
Yes, it is true.
Did you get, what do we need here?
So I think I understood the Alderwoman to option B, direct staff to stay with current plans for West Putes Road in the 2020 road program.
If I may, I am only speaking towards the eastern end of Putes Road.
That's all there is, so it's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were also including the other far end of.
That's
I would,
all there is.
I would suggest that we can have the full discussion during our budget hearings.
Okay, so we move on. Item G16 on page 235 is a resolution to award design of industrial park lift station. Is there a motion to approve resolution 2020, resolution to award design of the industrial park lift station to Grafe USA, $202,100?
Direction.
Is there such a motion? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G17 is a change order in the amount of $5,350 to make a bigger sign for the front paid by the Tourism Commission.
So moved.
You also note that there is a drawing at your table. We made a little bit of a change. We're not being quite so cute. We're making it straight instead of a F, because it would look weird on the other side.
Mayor, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
When there was talk a few weeks ago about Franklin Field being named Franklin Field, city attorney was saying that the city citizens own that name, and that sign was gonna come back before the council for approval. It went up like next week, and we never heard about it. Any comments on that?
I think I need a little more, Alderman Mayor. I'm not quite following.
Yeah, the city attorney said that we approved the use of the word Franklin, the name Franklin, for Franklin Field. So that was gonna come in, actually, we were told it was gonna come back to us with design. But it went up there, Franklin Field is Franklin Field. It never came back for approval to use the city name or approval for the sign, as far as I know.
Mr. City Attorney.
My understanding from the Economic Development Director is that the contract is not complete at this point in time.
That is correct. Are you referring, Alderman Mayor, to the naming of the stadium?
Yes, the field.
Okay, I would have to go back and refresh my memory from notes because I don't recall that.
Maybe the city attorney recalls that the city controls the name and we would have the naming rights. We would approve the naming rights if it were to be.
But
I believe that Rock Ventures decided to move forward and name it Franklin Field before their opening game, as opposed to not having any name at all for their stadium. And I believe that that was a decision made by the private developer. So in terms of what happens with the execution of the agreement, we'll have to take a closer look at that and determine if there's any issues. I don't have my notes from that, since that's a different topic, so I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer this evening, but I will certainly address it.
so Alderman, trying to be well, you said thank you, which is the end of the conversation, which if I was really smart, I'd be quiet, but maybe I'm not that smart. So the question would be is, what is it that you would want approval on, since the contract is between the Tourism Commission and and Rock Ventures?
Well, first of all, I was saying thank you to the director for answering my question and pursuing that. As I recall, the night we discussed the naming of the field, the back to the council, because the council controls the naming rights to use the term Franklin in naming the Franklin Field. That's all I'm asking. If I'm the only one that remembers it like that, then so be it.
Oh, I remember it.
Mr. City Attorney.
That's my recollection, and I believe it was mentioned in, or was part of the motion. Somewhere within the last week or so, I received a request for a recommendation of special counsel with regard to a combination of that agreement, which has not come back to me since whenever that meeting was, as well as some other development cooperation between the Tourism Commission and development-related entities, and a referral was made. And I'm assuming there was some follow-up on that somewhere in the last week, so.
All right, well, okay. I got questions, but I'll leave them alone. Do we have a motion? Is there a motion on the floor? Has it been voted? All those in favor of the motion to approve the change order signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Madam Clerk?
Alderman Dandria.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
no,
Alderwoman Wilhelm. Aye. Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Motion carries 5 ayes, 1 no, no absent, no abstentions. G18 is a report on current expenditures under the COVID crisis. Mr. Ratzenberg, we're at what, 212? Out of 250, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is G18, I believe.
Correct, page 251.
The city had a small amount of additional expenditures in the last 2 weeks, about $6,000 worth of labor expenses. There were no additional out-of-pocket expenses that the city had. A draft of the claim under the Road to Recovery COVID grant from the state was made. However, I have to admit that I failed to hit the submit button in a timely fashion, so we'll have to wait till September before we receive those funds. But there are no ongoing expenses of any significance that the city is incurring at this point, and it may be some weeks before the staff requests additional appropriation for this purpose.
So 212 out of 250.
I'm sorry?
We're at 212,000 out of 250.
Yes, but with the grant of getting back of 134,000, the city's really only spent about 79 of that 250.
Right, thank you. Any questions for the Director of Finance? G19, yes, sir, Alderman Mayor.
just one point, we did earlier on disinfecting of City Hall and possibility of cleaning a little more thoroughly. That may be one more expense that could be looked at, and maybe one more expense the finance director could consider and could,
Yeah, currently, we're using our staff for that, but, yeah, we'll take a look. That's,
even staff time can be charged and billed.
And to the Alderman's point, staff, when they are working on COVID-related issues, do in fact charge their time there, and we are making that claim when it is available under the Road to Recovery program.
Very good, thank you.
June financial report on G19 on page 253. Mr. Rosenberg, any highlights?
The highlights are included in the memo, Mr. Mayor, that was submitted to the Finance Committee, as well as copies to all of the aldermen earlier. The Finance Committee reviewed this at its recent July meeting and recommends acceptance of the report.
Alderman Wilhelm.
I'd like to ask some questions regarding funding, because I want to make sure that we don't dropped the ball again on the Marquette Avenue. So earlier I had talked to you about different funding that's available. And I don't know if the 116th Street will be awarded or how that's going to work out, but there is a fair amount of money in there that if it doesn't go through right away, it could go toward a portion of the Marquette thing. I don't want to take from that project, but if it doesn't move forward, that's an option. And you said there are currently 621,500 unused funds for different park projects and purchasing property. The Cascade Trail, which came up after Marquette Avenue, and the overflow parking, I'm not sure where we're at with that, but various other trails projects. So basically we would have a total of $768,000 available to match what we have there, and that should bring us there to that project. One of the things I see is we're talking about using these park impact fees for covering the trail costs or the sidewalks at Marquette. So if we take funds from other park projects to make sure we can cover that, I don't know what you're going to come up with for all of that, but I want to make sure that there's a commitment from this council to dedicate and get this project done. There was no timeline on the motion. That was probably a failure on the last motion and also a failure on this motion, because that one went over 5 months before anything happened. So I guess I'm looking for commitment that we can diligently financially put this project together with the funds that between what you've laid out here and other available funds, and even if there's some borrowing involved or whatever we have to do, I'm looking for that commitment that we're all on the same page, that we're going to make this project happen. So I don't have a motion to go with that, but I just want everyone up here to say, you made this motion before, made this motion now. Let's make sure that we don't end up dropping the ball on this. So as we move forward, can we continue with that? And Glenn, do you have an idea when you'll be able to bring information forward?
I am planning tomorrow or Thursday contact Mr. Lynch and see how quickly we can get a set of plans up to bid.
Thank you.
Okay, G20, page 293.
Mr. Mayor, do we have to
We gotta
receive and place on file?
Yeah, we made the motion,
Please.
but I had a question, and so we didn't vote.
On what?
The place up, receive the report, place up.
You did? I'll second it then.
Place the June 2020 financial report on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You got lots of support for that one.
Motion carries. I still don't know how Marquette Avenue got in the middle of a financial report, but, okay. G20, this one's gonna be fun. Development of a Franklin policy to eliminate private property inflow and infiltration. And I ask for the common council to pay particular attention to this. This is an important issue that needs some attention because there's lots of moving parts on this one.
So,
Mr. City Engineer.
okay. Apologize for the lateness, but I was hoping that we could do this out at a committee of the whole meeting, so it's going to take a little bit of time, and I apologize for that.
Ms. Specht, are you on the phone?
Ms. Beck?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes, I am.
Okay, good, thanks. Just chime in when you can.
Sure. Ms. Beck is an engineer with MMSD who helps with the PPII program. She's also a Franklin resident and member of our Board of Public Works. So I want to tell you a story. Happened once upon a time, specifically 20 years ago. Place far, far away, a place called Greencastle, Indiana. Population about 10,000 people, that includes a liberal arts college for about 3,000 kids, and a conservative surroundings, so it's what you would call Midwest. About the only thing in Greencastle at this time was the name, or actually these signs. So these signs say, warning, potential health hazard if overflowing. And the situation is because of a sanitary sewer system that they had at the time. I liken it to the couch behind Grandma's barn. It's very old. It's got a lot of cracks in it. It's got springs popping up everywhere. And so pretty much any time it would rain, basements around town would fill with water, sewage. If it was a significant rain, manholes were overflowing. These signs were literally in every neighborhood, sometimes several of them in the neighborhood. And severe rains, city staff would be out the next day, clean up the streets because it'd blow a manhole lid and spew toilet paper and everything else around. So Greencastle was not green. They became under a agreed order with the state EPA version that they have IDEM. And as part of that project, they had a consultant come in and they looked at the entire system and decided that it was too expensive to fix the sewers. So what they were going to do is they were going to allow Greencastle to build a sewage plant that would handle the peak flows and build a couple large diameter sewers to maybe help redirect some of the sewage around the downtown area. So that's when they hired me as their city engineer. At the time I was, I call a sewer rat, sewer geek as far as projects that I was working on. The state allowed Greencastle to do those other projects on the condition that they continue to work on their I&I, inflow and infiltration. So we set to work and we did pretty much every kind of project that there was to do I&I. So we did pipelining, pipe bursting, point repairs. We replaced pipes. We replaced manholes. We lined manholes. We replaced manhole castings that were open. Pretty much, if it was in the I&I toolbox, we at least looked at it, if not made use of it. We worked very hard on that as we built the new plant and the other project. So at the end of the project, when we finished the plant, fortunately there was a drought. So for a couple months, our sewer superintendent Mike came in my office. I still remember this day. His eyes, he goes, wow, it hasn't rained for a while. We haven't had any overflows for a while. The sewage plant's built. So quickly, I wrote a letter to the state. We got off of the agreed order, and I'm glad we did it when we did because then it started raining again and things started going again. I recall another conversation with Mike. He came in my office another day and he goes, Glenn, he goes, all that work we did to fix the sewer system, I don't see a bit of difference. And I said, well, let me tell you a little secret in the I&I business. It really doesn't help. We have cameras, we look, we find things, and we fix things. You may help the situation for that time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, but what happens is that water will find someplace else to get into the system. It will back up, it will maybe get to a higher level, and will maybe go in the sewer laterals. When it does have the higher water table, it actually has more pressure, and you can actually have worse I&I after some repairs. So I said, I'm not surprised, but tell you what I'd like to do, Mike. Let's try something that I saw at had some ideas at a conference I had gone to previously in Kansas City. So at this conference, it was all on I&I. There was 3 different presentations where they actually tracked every drop of water in the system. And what they found was that 30 to 40% of the I&I, or I should say 60 to 70% of the I&I came from the private side. So private sources like your house or your lateral, something like that. So I realized that if you had what I call the Maxwell House system, good to the last drop public system, you've only fixed 30 to 40% of the problem. So I figured out that you were much more active if you could actually go after the private side. In addition, at this conference, I saw a lot of examples where other communities were under agreed order, much like Greencastle at the time. And you don't want to go there. So they basically had a warrant. They would go to your house, knock on your door. They had a police escort sometimes, go in your house and evaluate it. And then when they find defects, they require that you fix them. Well, fortunately, in Greencastle, we got off of the agreed order. So I said, we have some time, we have some breathing time to do this. I said, let's see what we can do. I've got this idea, and so we tried it. So I put in your packet a copy of the policy that we drafted. The whole idea is that in Greencastle, we would require that every home at the time of sale be inspected, or at least certified. So, and the trigger actually happened when you asked for a new utility count. So you would come into the city hall and you would ask for a new utility count, and we would make sure that your home had been certified I&I compliant. We didn't know when that home ever got fixed. So typically what happened when you and I would buy and sell a home, that the guy who came in and did the roof inspection, the termite inspection, yada, 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 would do an I&I inspection, and things would be fixed. We tried to write this policy plain enough that any person could actually figure out how to fix their home. DePaul University actually helped me do a video. I think it played several times a day for quite a while on the public access channel, then once a day, then once a week, but I think you can probably still catch it on the occasional Saturday. But it explains to the residents. So there's really two reasons why people violate your policy. One is they know it and they do it anyway, kind of like speeders we were talking about today. But in reality, people don't realize that by them not fixing their downspout, they're causing sewage to back up in their neighbor's house. So a lot of people just fix stuff on their own. They realized what was wrong, and they would go out and fix it. Other plumbers would be in a house fixing things like maybe a leaky toilet, whatever, and they would say, oh, by the way, while I'm here, when you go to sell your house, this won't pass inspection. If you pay me to fix that now, I'll give you an inspection for free, those kinds of things. So people fix stuff without the city ever knowing about it. The only people we charged were to be a certified inspector. To be a certified inspector, I think you paid $100. You came in and listened to me preach at you for about an hour. I explained what we're looking for, how to inspect it, and then that's the only person we charged. Afterwards, when we tried to track the effectiveness of it, people who bought the homes had no idea what issues were done to their houses. The idea was that when things were found, we didn't require that they get fixed. So we would give you a waiver. So, for example, you may have a very inexpensive house with a very expensive fix, like maybe it had replaced a lateral under a road or something like that. We would allow you to not fix it, but then you might have an increased sewer account until you did show us a certified compliance statement. So our thought was the average house in Greencastle sold every 7 years. We figured in 7 years we would have 80, 90% of the homes looked at, and if we could get rid of that without any cost to the city, that would be a big boom. So remember, I told you that in the beginning of this policy, even after we did all the fixes to our public system, every time it would rain, things would overflow all over town. And when some lift stations, they would start flowing right away, and they would last for several days, leaking sewage into the nearby river. About 3 years into the policy, when people had a chance to get this fixed, we were able to get rid of every single one of these signs except for one location, actually when I left the city, and that was for the main lift station in town. And now when it overflowed, instead of used to it would overflow for days, it had to be a really, really big rain. It would take a while for it to overflow, but when it did overflow, it was just for a few hours. So I believe they actually fixed that once I left. So just this policy alone that didn't cost the city really anything to implement, just some staff time, it had tremendous impact. We did some research. I had a consultant we worked with who helped us try to study it. And this consultant, by the way, had a Milwaukee office, and Dr. Willie Ganwa, if you know Dr. Willie Ganwa from MSOE now, he works full-time with MSOE, professor. He actually came down and he helped do all the math to figure out what effect it had. We went on a tour, if you will, the Glenn and Willie tour. We would preach at different conferences across the United States on sewage issues. I had people as far away as Alaska call and get advice on how this worked. Everybody implemented it a little bit differently. When I went to be a consultant again, I actually helped some other communities in Indiana and Ohio implement some similar policies tailored to their community, how they wanted to do things. I mentioned that Dr. Willie Gahn was from Milwaukee. He actually came back to MMSD. As I understand the story, he tried to sell MMSD on the concept, and the realtors got a hold of the idea, and they went to Madison and they passed a law that you cannot have something hinged on the sale of a house. So I would have to do it differently if I were to do something here. I would like to take the Greencastle policy and do something with the same flavor, make it as easy for the residents as possible, and with as little effort on them as possible. And if we find something, it's not a big deal. We'll give them so much time to fix it. If they don't fix it, then maybe we charge, $10 a month or something like that additional on their sewer bill. I believe we do have some policy or some permission to do that. So MMSD, when I first came to work here in Franklin, I discussed the policy with them, and at the time I could not use their funds to do a similar policy because they had some restrictions on their PPII funds that you can only have, I think it was up to 20% of the dollars they wanted to actually spend on researching. They wanted 80% to actually go fix things. So if you notice on the action sheet G20, we accumulate roughly $200,000 to $250,000 per year. We are struggling to figure out how to spend that. We currently have $1.1 million earmarked. We are trying to work on some things. We did the Ross and Holmes stormwater project last year. We are working on the St. Martin's lift station. Just to illustrate, does Franklin have an I&I problem? I can show you data where our St. Martin's lift station has roughly 500,000 gallons a day in dry weather flow. And during some wet weather flows this year, we were up at 3 million gallons. So that's a factor of 6. In theory, your sanitary sewer should not see any increase in flow during the rain event, but somehow rain is getting into our system. We do have Brown and Caldwell working on some projects to do some PPII projects like we did in the Ross and Holmes area. We did 3 projects way back in the day, but we're really struggling to figure out how to spend this $1.1 million. MMSD has recently changed their rules on how they would allow this. So they would allow more than 20% to do investigative work. What I would like to do is be able to take this money and develop some sort of policy tailored to Franklin and how we want to work it, but we would pay for an inspector free of charge to go into homes and to find things and to somehow be the nice guy in allowing people time to fix it when it's convenient for them and affordable for them. So before I go to MMSD and try to work on a policy, something akin to this, I guess I'd like to ask you if you would like to maybe, or ask you if you would support some sort of a policy like this for Franklin. Obviously, we might have some sort of committee to get together to talk about, what will and won't work here with Wisconsin statutes, with Franklin rules, with the MMSD regulations that we have to work around. But it would be a good way to spend this money that we have earmarked for our use to help the residents of Franklin and help the sewage in Franklin. At the MMSD, the TAT meetings that I regularly attend, Technical Assistance Team, I think is what it stands for, TAT, they have had discussions that in the future, the sewer rates could be dependent upon your peak flows. So, for example, if you don't show any increase in flows during a wet weather event, you would have the very lowest sewage rates around. For areas that have very leaky sewers and high peak flows, they would charge you accordingly because your sewage is actually taking up more of the tunnel system. So it is behoovant on Franklin to really grab this, wrestle it by the horns, and bring it to bring it to a manageable system, and I believe this is a good way to spend money, but I'd like to know if you would be supportive of development of a policy tailored to Franklin.
Let's do Alderman Nelson, then I want to hear from Becky Speck. Becky, you have anything you want to chime in with?
Thank you. I do have a couple additional pieces of information that I'd like to share. As part of the PPII policy, would require that some of these funds actually still be put towards implementing improvements. And along Glenn's program, there are options that we can look at possibly funding directly to residents. This is options that we can discuss and look into further. We at MMSC are also looking at implementing a program that is somewhat similar to Glenn's proposed program on a much smaller scale for the whole county, but it only is going to have $1 million worth of funding that is available for countywide at this time. So Glenn's proposed program is a really great opportunity to get into the homes and get I&I removed, because a lot of municipalities have concerns about doing work within the homes. And this is a great opportunity to get in there and have the residents be more of an active participant.
Alderman Nelson.
Okay, let's maybe touch on that topic right there, getting into the homes. So you mentioned earlier that, let's say a resident doesn't wish to have the city in their house. And you had mentioned that the police would come along. I mean, are we talking warrant? Well, hold on a minute.
Okay.
Because this is going down a very dangerous path that I definitely will not support in any way, shape, or form, having the police enter in someone's home on a civil issue.
So, yeah, that's only correct. So there are communities across the country that things got so bad, their state EPA required them to go to those extremes. We are nowhere near that. And I didn't want Greencastle to go to that level again. So
Hey,
that,
Glenn, back up.
Okay.
We're not doing that.
no, we're not. No, we're not. I'm trying to
Yeah,
develop a Franklin.
John, we're not doing that.
No,
Let me say that again. We're not doing that. Glenn,
correct. We're not going
We're
anywhere
not
near
doing
there. Anywhere there. We're trying to do this in such a friendly way. And so it would not be anywhere near
Glenn.
that. So,
we're not
Thank
doing
you.
it.
correct.
Kristen, say, we're not doing it.
Alderwoman Wilhelm,
We're not doing that.
we're not doing that.
But John still's got the floor.
I thought he was done.
Okay, Alderman Wilhelm.
I guess with all the things you have on your plate, how much time do you think you have to spend on getting this together? Because you have an awful lot of projects. And Marquette Avenue, Marquette. And as many times as you heard me say College Avenue, before this comes back, you're gonna probably hear Marquette Avenue. And maybe I'll just shorten it up to MA. But I'm really supportive of your idea and project. I just don't want the Trails Project, the Putes Road, and the projects that we all up here are really working on hard. And really, I would like to see you put some effort on the Marquette and just get that done. So if you can do that, you have my full support.
Your show, what's up? Your show.
My show. So I do have staff and you work in the utility department who would probably do a lion's share of some of this. There would be some meeting times. We fit it in. I mean, I had, 8 council actions for tonight, so we juggle routinely projects.
I just want, when you prioritize, which one surfaces to the top, that's my thought here, so. And I know the mayor always has a role in that, but I think the council has made a couple directions on this.
May I offer that if it weren't a Greencastle kind of policy, we'd have to spend some other kind of time to figure out how else to spend this money.
And what about developers that can use this for business roofs. Is there that available for assisting?
So again, I haven't started developing how it would actually work in Franklin. That would be part of this committee. Would businesses be eligible? I don't see why not, but we would make that as a decision. I don't know what MMSD's rules might be, but we'd have to look at all that.
I know MMSD already has PPI for businesses to apply for. I don't know how that fits into the city's actual pot, but I know there are grants for developers for that.
Those are all good questions that we would have to flesh out.
Okay.
If I could speak to that a little bit, we don't necessarily have direct PPI funds for businesses. We have lots of other different sources of funding for green infrastructure. But these funds should be worked more towards residential properties.
Thank you.
Let's do it this way. Is there anybody with a violent objection to this?
Only if Marquette is a priority above it. I have no violent objection.
Believe me, I got that. So,
Should I say it again?
this is not going to be a top priority at any rate. We got other things to do. But, so since there's no violent objection and there's more work to be done on this before he can bring something to us to say yes or no. So, Glenn, you got the sense that, yeah, let's start down the path.
I'll start negotiations with MMSD.
But it's not front burner. Okay? Anybody else got anything for Glenn on this one? Dan, I would urge you, Alderman Mayor, and then Alderman Barber. St. Martin's is going to be a prime target, so I would urge you to be a part of this. That was just a comment. Alderman Barber.
How does the public get educated on this? I mean, is that gonna take a lot of effort to win them over as to why they would go ahead and do this, or why there's a need for this? I mean, how does that all fit into this in terms of funding and everything else?
So what I provided in your packet is a 28-page document. It's really kind of a flyer. It was meant to be easy to read for anybody to pick up. If you're not mechanically inclined, you could read through it and understand exactly what we're trying to do and make the repairs yourself if it didn't require a plumbing permit. I had DePauw University help me put together a video that we played on our public access channel. We can have discussions. I would suspect that in Franklin, because we're going to actually have plumbers go do the inspections, the plumbers are really the ones we have to educate, and they would they would explain to the people what's wrong, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I just see that as a major piece.
I think you're right. Alderman Mayor, you had a question?
Yes, I did. Before you pointed out the obvious to me, thank you for that. But anyway, I want to commend Glenn for this. I think the initiative is very good. I think it's a great job. I do concur. I think there's other things that might be priorities, but it's another great thing to work on and work toward. And I commend him for coming up with the idea and bringing the initiative forward.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll move forward. We're going to wait for Sandy to get here, but before that happens, let's move on to vouchers and payroll, item I, page 381. And let's do this slow because I got to take notes as well as read. So here we go. Is there a motion approving the city vouchers on any date of August 1st, 2020, in the amount of $3,355,591.45, and payroll dated July 31st, 2020, in the amount of $450,597.82, and payments of the various payroll deductions in the amount of $441,089.81 plus city matching payments. An estimated payroll for August 1st, estimated at $395,000, and payments of the various payroll deductions estimated at $217,000, and payments of the city matching payments, and approval to to release tax transfers to American Deposit Management in the amount of $9 million.
So moved.
Second.
Hold on a
Mr.
sec.
Mayor?
Hold on. What did I miss?
Staff has reviewed check number 179310 to Wanasec Corporation and finds that the $41,697.28 check was approved without appropriations and would respectfully request that that item be excluded from the approval this evening.
You're going to do that to me, aren't you?
I'm sorry, but the
Okay.
council asks that I watch and only pay items that are appropriated, and this is an item that came to my attention that didn't belong there.
Okay, what check number?
179310 to the Wanasec Corporation for $41,697.28.
Mayor?
Hold on.
All right.
I got limited bandwidth, as you
Well,
know.
this is just for Paul. I just,
It's on page 17 of 23 of the list of vouchers.
And that brings the vouchers to what? Can you give that to me? 3 million.
The math works out to whatever the math works out to.
All right, so accounting will correct the math off of the 3,300,000 and it'll be whatever it is.
Correct.
Okay, and DeAndre made the motion, and who seconded?
I did.
Barbara. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, I just want,
I'm sorry, Alderman Wilhelm.
Paul, what account was that charged for? What was the project?
It was charged to the 68th Street Hill Mitigation Project.
Thank you.
So one more question.
Alderman Mayor.
41,000 is not a small amount. What happens to that amount? And somebody still needs to be paid something for something.
Mr. Mayor, the finance staff has made inquiries of the two departments which approved the payment, asking for further information as to what appropriation, and still waiting on answers on those questions.
Thank you.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, when you get your stuff together.
Is it amended to include
Yes, the motion's been amended, correct, Alderman Dandria?
Yes.
that? Yes.
And Alderman Barber.
Alderman Dandria,
Aye.
Alderman Mayor,
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman,
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
6 ayes, no noes, no absence, no abstentions, motion carries. We move back to H1, licenses, Alderman Nelson.
Okay, a few things tonight at licensing. Number one, Courtney Day, our health director officer, joined us to give insight, direction, and perhaps guidelines for future businesses that want to have events. So with that said, there's a few things that I would ask Madam Clerk. There was, starting with Romy's Swiss Landmark, well, not Swiss, they didn't show, but Romy's Landmark. Some of these areas didn't have, these businesses didn't have any sort of response back to the questions, and some said they didn't receive the questions, specifically Landmark. So if staff could check on the email, and the one on the Landmark folder, I wrote on the email that should be used.
Madam Clerk.
Before you get into the actual motion of what you're approving, and I just want to address, Landmark just came in last Friday and applied.
Okay.
So normally, departments are given about a month to review and submit their questions. Departments have really been kind of doing a one-day turnaround, probably because they're all very similar at this point. But we did not, I mean, we were just getting them in, so we did not get a chance to send Landmark hers, and figured that that would occur at the license committee meeting, and she could address it at that point. So we'll make sure if, and I don't know what your motion's gonna be, but you know, if it's gonna continue, we'll make sure she does get a copy of all of that.
Okay, thank you. Starting with number 1, Country Lanes Bowling, they've got a change of ownership, so we recommend approval pending verification of payment and a background check. The new owners came in tonight with the current owner. Number 2, Romy's, Mr. Fabry withdrew for now, he withdrew. Swiss Street, no-show. Landmark, hold for 2 weeks. The email's in there, if they can just be emailed. Some things, St. Paul's, we had nothing on, did they withdraw? Official?
Yes.
Okay. Going down to Borger, that was a no-show for the 4th time, I believe. So we are still gonna probably hold for one more appearance. Evans, again, that was a no-show. Miller, approve of the letter. Solstice, approve. Was that with a letter? Just regular approval? Thank you. Cook, Dresdo, and Ebert, approved. Hanstein is hold for appearance. Approve on Helm, approve on Howell. Lehman, hold for appearance. Planton, approve of the letter. Rodriguez, hold for appearance. Ivana, approve. Carly Thompson should be not Thomason, it should be Thompson. Thompson, needs a notary seal.
And is it
Approved, needs a notary seal.
Mr. City Attorney.
Does no-show mean that it's held till the next meeting?
Yes, we're gonna go hold one more meeting on that.
Well, you
For
said
Evans.
no-show a number of times. Does that mean it's held over to the next meeting?
Well,
Hold for
we,
appearance.
we have been holding for appearance on Borger. This will be the 4th time, and then we have to decide after next meeting what we're gonna do. And then Evans was a no-show. I don't believe we had a count on that, but we'd like one more time for hold for appearance.
So the answer
So
is
every
yes.
time you said no-show,
Okay?
you intend that to also mean hold for appearance?
For this next meeting, yes. I'm gonna go with yes for this next one, but then we're gonna make a determination on some of these that have been no-shows. Okay? Anything else?
Could you just repeat your action on, or your recommendation on Shannon Miller and Joseph Solstice?
Shannon Miller was approved with a letter, and Solstice was a straight approval.
And I would go get the folders, but we still have 2 weeks because they do have provisional licenses, but, I believe that Destiny Evans and Borger might have appeared last year and had no additional charges since they appeared and received a warning letter. But without running and getting the folder, we'll put them on hold for 2 weeks. But that might be there were notes on the file, so I'll just double check them and we'll make sure that they're on next week.
Thank you. That's my motion.
I don't know, huh?
Mayor, in the beginning, you said we shouldn't really be having any events, and I think the licensing committee needs some real direction from the health department before our next meeting on how you would like us to handle those, because, you know, we get in there and then people are like, oh, but we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and then tonight we had some, well, oh, we're an establishment where no one wears masks and that we just, whatever's comfortable, and, you know, so we need some better policies so we can make uniform decisions. Thank you.
Well, that was me ranting. That was.
And I'm okay with that, yeah. Just if we can just kind of put something down on which direction you want us to go, or we decide to go as a council, or whatever.
Madam Clerk.
So when applicants come in for special events or temporary events, we do send them, depending on what they're looking for and what if departments are affected by it, whether it's planning or sometimes there are uses that are restricted, but we do send them to the health department, and we do advise them that, well, the council hasn't approved anything in the past for the last 3 months. So we do give them a heads up on that. But we will, I will pass that along to the health officer, that we can have some uniform, maybe a handout at the current time that tells them, these are the steps you have to follow, and if you aren't going to, then along with your application, submit any kind of alterations to it.
Thank you.
Alderman Nelson?
Yes, and, Courtney did attend our meeting tonight, and she did, we did request that, and she said she would prepare something, so we are all on the same page.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Who seconded that motion? Who seconded that motion?
I did.
Thank you. Sir, you've been here the whole meeting watching this escapade, and we're done. Did we miss something? Okay, good.
We're not done.
I know, we're going into closed session now, so I just wanted to make sure that you weren't waiting for something and, okay. We're going to G21 on page 323. Is there a motion to enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 19.857(b) for market competition and bargaining reasons to deliberate and consider terms relating to a tax incremental district number 8 development agreement between the City of Franklin, JHB Properties LLC, and ZS Enterprises LLC Industrial Spec Buildings Mixed-Use Development, and a development agreement for JHB Properties LLC and ZS Enterprises LLC Industrial Spec Buildings Mixed-Use Development, Public Improvements, and the investing of public funds and governmental actions in relation thereto, and to effect such development, including the terms and provisions of the development agreements for the development of property located on the south side of West Elm Road in the approximate 3,500 block area where West Elm Road to be extended to the west, consisting of approximately 79.79 acres, and to re-enter open session at the same place thereafter to act on such matters discussed therein as it deems appropriate. Madam Clerk.
Alderman Dandria.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderman Barber. Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
We are in closed session. Who is on the telephone?